Happy Friday and into lcpioneers.com live, presented by Pios. We're with you 4 days a week, Tuesday through Friday, on Facebook Live. You can find us by easily typing in lcpioneers.com/live and interacting with the Facebook comments below with all of our guests, keeping you connected with student athletes, coaches, members of the Lewis and Clark College community, and alumni. Tuesday through Friday, 11:30 a.m. Pacific time, and all of our past shows available to watch on demand at lcpioneers.com, as well as on our YouTube page, youtube.com/lcpios. Hi, everyone. I am Ryan Goff. I am the play-by-play voice and director of athletic communications for Lewis and Clark. We're the Pioneers out of Portland, Oregon, and with 19 intercollegiate athletics programs competing at the NCAA Division III level as part of the Northwest Conference, other institutions from throughout Northwest Oregon and the state of Washington, and with over 430 institutions playing NCAA D3, a chance for our student athletes to compete on a national scale as well. Lewis and Clark also, as we've talked with many of our student athletes, coaches, even members from the community about the overseas study program, a really robust opportunity for our student athletes to have experiential liberal arts education on a global scale. And we'll continue to talk about those opportunities as we go along with the show. We are excited in a few minutes to bring in our guest, a class of 2018 graduate from the tennis program. We'll talk to Christine Eliazo, and it's exciting because a chance to catch up with an alumnus who is one of the most recent Northwest Conference championship teams at Lewis and Clark. They won the title in 2016. She excelled as one of the best players on the team during her time. We'll just kind of get a feel for how things are going with the pandemic, where she is, and then certainly what's ahead for her future and how she stayed in touch with some of her teammates and coaches over the years. We'll relive some memories as well. We invite you to get in touch with the show. You can do so using the Facebook Live comments or email us anytime, sports@lclark.edu. Maybe you have a suggestion for a future guest, or you have a question for any of our guests coming up. You're more than welcome to leave those via email, sports@lclark.edu. We're also on Twitter and Instagram, LC Pioneers, on both of those platforms. We invite you to connect with us on social media. And as I've mentioned, the YouTube playlist continues to get updated. Yesterday, a fun conversation with head volleyball coach Emily Hayes, and the playlist goes all the way back to the final day of March as the pandemic continues throughout the United States. Certainly hope everyone in your circle is as safe as possible right now. But you can check some of those past interviews at youtube.com/lcpios. And we're continuing to get excited for Sunday, as we're going to have our Lewis and Clark Pio Stream watchback on Sunday at 12 o'clock. We're going to relive the double overtime win for women's soccer against Willamette last October, and you may have seen it in our Facebook feed. Already kind of showed a preview of what that will look like with two of our current student athletes, two of our recently graduated student athletes. Coach Jim Tersey was in on the recording as we watch back to that game, and then we're going to have Becca McCullough and Kenny Bigley, two also returning student athletes, live chatting during the show on Sunday at noon. You can find it on Pio Stream. We're planning to put it on Facebook Live as well. Pretty excited about the opportunity to relive what was the middle of a really hot streak for the Lewis and Clark women's soccer team last year. And we're planning to do that with some of our other teams moving forward as well. And last but not least, it is October 2nd, so we've started Homecoming at Home. You can go to go.lclark.edu/homecoming or go to lcpioneers.com. We have a banner right below the main stories on the front page and see the schedule of events for Homecoming at Home. lcpioneers.com live will be part of that, as we'll have the opportunity to talk to some of our individual inductees for the Lewis and Clark Hall of Fame class of 2020. We'll be doing that sometime in the middle of October 13th through 16th, as kind of a precursor to the in-person induction ceremony that we hope to hold sometime next spring. So with all that said, let's bring in our guest for today, a graduate of the class of 2018 from Lewis and Clark women's tennis. Christine Eliazo joins us on lcpioneers.com live. Appreciate you taking the time to end our week, Christine, and catch things up. I'm excited to have some moments to relive the past and what it was like to be a Lewis and Clark student athlete. But let's catch up in terms of just how things have been. The pandemic now, 6+ months, and you're in the Bay Area. What's it been like for you trying to adjust to everything?
It's been quite an adjustment because when the pandemic hit around February, March, the Bay Area actually was on lockdown, so it was super no one was going out for the first few months of it. During that time, I was also taking some classes, working full time. So definitely like my classes switched to online right away, and then also I was working remotely for a few months there, but then I ended up going back to work. I was working as a clinical research coordinator in an eye clinic, and so I worked with a lot of patients. But then I ended up just actually leaving my job back in June, and then so now I'm just kind of working on getting into med school at home. So now I'm just sort of studying remotely.
Yeah, I'm excited to ask you about that journey toward med school in just a few moments. You know, your biology major at Lewis and
Mm-hmm.
Clark. But let's start with the beginning in terms of Lewis and Clark and you. Ultimately, what led you to becoming a pioneer and joining the women's tennis program at Lewis and Clark?
Well, I guess just to start off super broadly, like I knew that I wanted to go out of state just because I wanted to see something new. So I stumbled upon Lewis and Clark College, which I had actually like never heard of until my mom was actually talking to Aurora Garrison, who was an alumni, her mom, and they started chatting because me and Aurora used to play junior tennis. So I visited. I spoke to Pat, the coach, when I was there, um, and so I decided to go do an on-campus visit. And then I saw just sort of how like sort of quirky everything was, and also just sort of the I felt a very community spirit when I was at Lewis and Clark, which was different than where I was from because I came from a college prep high school where everything was super competitive and kind of cutthroat. And I liked how at Lewis and Clark, like all the professors wanted to help you out, your peers genuinely wanted you to do well, and that's sort of what drove me to want to go to LC. And I'm glad that my first impression was correct, and I was fairly happy with sort of my academic life there.
Yeah, I mean, you're describing kind of the crux of what the NCAA Division III experience is supposed to be like. That balance to allow you to be the best you can be athletically and academically. I
Mm-hmm.
will ask you some questions specifically related to the biology degree, but focusing on tennis, you know, you had the opportunity, as you mentioned, to play for Coach Dreves, and then head coach now Jimmy Chow was an assistant with your team. I'm curious, you know, when you look back at the coaching staff and some of the memories, especially because tennis sometimes sports one of the largest coaching staffs among the intercollegiate programs at Lewis and Clark, what stands out about the coaches that you had a chance to work with?
Well, first of all, like the coaches at the time were like Jimmy, Marco, like Pun, like and Pat too. Like they were all super. I feel like very supportive of you. Like they didn't see you as just like one of their athletes. They really saw you like as the whole person. And I felt like for me, I definitely had a lot of moments where like I was super down, and I feel like I could just go to any one of them and just sort of talk about my issues. And like I would just remember like sometimes a really bad day I would be like crying in the office, but they were all super like nice about it, all really supportive. And I think that like and because of that, like it really helped me grow as a person because it showed me that like like even at my ugliest, like people out there still cared about me, but at the same time, like would push me to be a better person. And I think like that's like the most that I got out of my athletic career, like more than just being better at tennis, but just being like a better person.
Yeah, I've heard
Yeah.
that from other student athletes in terms of their
Mm-hmm.
relationships with coaches because you have that opportunity with the smaller class sizes to build unique relationships with professors, and the same with your coaches and some of the staff members at Lewis and Clark. Christine Eliazo joining us on lcpioneers.com live, former Lewis and Clark women's tennis student athlete, and your teammates. I have to imagine with the tennis program, both women and men spending so much time together, whether on road trips or in practices, etc. You kind of share that dome. I'm curious, what are some of the best stories or the best memories you have in terms of your teammates and when you were competing for Lewis and Clark?
Well, definitely, like for me, what really stood out was just getting to go on like those weekend trips with them. Like, of course, like we definitely get to spend a lot of time together, like in the hotels and the buses. Um, I guess one of like the best memories for me as as a team was when we sort of came together to like win like the conference championship during my sophomore year. I felt like it's that's sort of where like all of our practices and hard work like as a team like really came together because I think that at that point I actually ended up like losing my match. So getting to watch like my teammates like win on my behalf was pretty good. Also, but also just like like all 4 years, just getting to like make new friends and meet new people, and getting to like meet new personalities, I think was super fun. And yeah, just joking around with everybody, all that kind of stuff.
Have you been able to stay in touch with many of your fellow Lewis and Clark
Huh?
alumni?
I've definitely kept in touch with like some more than others, mainly just because of the whole distance. Like not a lot of people from the tennis team I feel like have come back to the Bay Area that regularly, but I still keep in touch with Claudia Liu, who was my old doubles partner, and back when I was a sophomore. And then I also try to keep in touch with Glenna G. Taylor, Asian Fox. I tried to keep in touch with and my coach Jimmy. But of course, I would love to keep in touch with everybody. But those are the ones that I've mainly like stayed the most in touch with.
Well, let's concentrate on, you mentioned that conference championship, and like I mentioned at the top, this is the last conference championship that Lewis and Clark had. Really big opportunity for your team, and I know how hard that path was. What was it like to live it firsthand and ultimately raise that trophy when you were able to get the championship?
Well, I just remember. So we won that championship in my sophomore year, but my freshman year, I felt like it was definitely more of a struggle, just because at that time it was basically like a new team than before. So like we had like five new freshmen, including myself. So we kind of had to get that adjusted, and then also like going up against Whitman, who my freshman year would consistently beat us in almost every match, and so um, then going into my sophomore year, we definitely had to like work around each other's personalities, practice every day, like try not to get on each other's nerves too much. And then um, I just think that because like, we were a new team freshman year, but then, we were the same team coming back sophomore year, we were able to sort of work together more effectively. And then also just when it came down to it at that last match against Whitman, we were able to finally beat them to win the championship. And I think that was like a really good moment because we sort of like rose to the challenge as a team, whereas before we may have fallen flat.
Now, I think you might have had one of the best nicknames of any student athlete at Lewis and Clark. They called you Queen Christine. Did you take to that nickname?
Oh no, that was sort of beyond my control. I'll give that I'll give that credit to Glenna G. Taylor because it rhymes. Queen Christine. I'm not really sure like how that kind of was brought up, but I specifically remember Glenna just like shouting that in the dome, and then I think that the others kind of just took to that, including Jimmy, and I think even Tash at one point. But I think like those are like the main three people like use the nickname. But I appreciate it. It like really boosted my confidence.
I meant to have the picture ready to go, and I was looking for it on my phone to at least show up to my camera. But there's a great picture of you holding the trophy above your head like a crown, which is one of my favorite photos that I've seen in my time at Lewis and Clark. We're talking to Christine Eliazo, joining us on lcpioneers.com live. You can watch the show 4 days a week, Tuesday through Friday at 11:30 a.m. Pacific time on Facebook Live, and catch the past shows at youtube.com/lcpios. Let's shift to the academic side. Like I mentioned, a biology major. What was it about the biology major that kind of suited you and made you choose that path? And what are some of the parts that really stood out with that path?
Well, I was actually either between biology and English, and at one point I wanted to do a double, but I guess I ended up sticking it out with bio just because, like, um, I mean, like I was thinking of going to med school, but I wasn't entirely sure, so I kind of wanted to keep the door open for myself. And then just with the biology majors, to me, I like it when like the answers are more concrete, and I feel like with biology, like you can just kind of sort of study a whole like system, like a living system, ecosystem, and just you can sort of find out your answers through like through that. Um, and so I guess what really like made me want to stick it out honestly like was the people in the class, like my professors and also my classmates. Like I really feel like I could like I guess my best memories were just dropping by into office hours with questions that I had, and getting just like loads of support and a lot of help. I think that like for me, like what really stuck out to me was I think it was my junior year. I was in neurobio, and like that was a super interesting class. Like I loved it. But there was a time when I actually like made a huge mistake in class, and I thought like it actually like ruined my grade because it was a group project, and I remember like specifically like it just kind of like fell apart. So I went to like Tamily, who was my professor at the time, and she like made me realize that this was something to grow from and like not something to sort of be stuck in. So that also really helped me like grow not just as a student but as a person. Like I said before, and overall, I think that the biology major was just like I think it really just prepared me to be to go into the pre med path because it showed me like hard work and discipline because I feel like it was one of those majors where you can't just sort of scoop like you can't just coast. You have to really put in the work and the time. And I think like that's what I really got out of the biology major.
Yeah, and you mentioned now you're kind of in that moment of transition, looking into medical school. What are some of the destinations that you're exploring professionally? What outcomes could there be for you?
Well, right now I'm looking into psychiatry just as a field, just because I really feel like I guess there needs to be more people talking about like mental illness first off, and I definitely want to be there as like a one aspect, like as be there as a support system to somebody else going through like difficult times, and also I just think that like the mind is like super interesting, and so then that's kind of where I want to end up, but honestly though I really feel like um any field of medicine would be like super interesting to pursue. So
Well, we wish you the best of luck. We certainly appreciate all that you brought to our teams and our community while you were here. And I hope as soon as the pandemic subsides and we can welcome people back to the Portland campus, we hope to see you there, maybe taken in a tennis match. But what we do certainly appreciate is your time today to join us on
thank,
lcpioneers.com live.
thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. That was great. Christine Eliazo joining us on lcpioneers.com live. Yeah, that picture, I found it. I put it in the comments because she's holding the crown above her head, and you could tell the happiness from that team winning that conference title because she mentioned it the year before. They felt like they had the team that could get it. And while they didn't come out with the championship in 2015, the 2016 team did, and that was such a big deal. I remember Coach Dreves holding that trophy, one of my favorite pictures as well, with just this gigantic smile on his face, and you could tell that really was a culmination of some hard work for the women's tennis program, and Christine was such a big part of that. She mentioned Claudia Lou, who I likely will see on the show at some point down the road. Someone she stayed in touch with, and excited to hear from her too, because there were so many great competitors on that program. So certainly appreciate the time and have a chance to catch up, and best of luck down the road, whether it's into clinical psychology or medical school, whatever your path is, Christine. That's the last show of this week. We are excited for our shows next week. Still finalizing our guest for Tuesday, but we do have our Wednesday through Friday lineup set up. Matthew Seimer will join us from men's golf, a chance to talk to the San Diego native, as so he, I think, is actually remote this particular semester, so a chance to catch up with Matthew and see how things are going for him in Southern California. Chris Fonts, the head coach of men's and women's swimming, will join us on Thursday. And then Jim Proctor will talk to us about the Environmental Studies Symposium, which will be coming up later this month. And this, again, is something about this show that I truly enjoy, is we've expanded ourselves to be able to bring in people from the Lewis and Clark College community. And environmental studies is such a great program at Lewis and Clark. Many of our student athletes come to Lewis and Clark to pursue the environmental studies program and have been heavily involved with the symposium. So it'll be fun to talk to Jim about what that's going to look like. We will finalize all of our guests and post those on our Facebook Live page so you can see the lineup sometime tomorrow or on Sunday. And speaking of Sunday, that's the day at noon, as I mentioned at the top, the Pios women's soccer watchback, Pios stream watchback, and a chance to relive the double overtime victory for the Lewis and Clark women's soccer program against Willamette from last October, in the middle of an undefeated streak, really. I think there was one loss in the 7 or 8 games, as Lewis and Clark set a Northwest Conference wins record last year. It was such a great season for Coach Jim Tercey and his program, And so we're excited to kind of relive that with 4 student athletes, Coach Tercy himself, and then we'll have 2 additional student athletes chatting with you as we watch on Facebook Live and on Pios stream. So look for that link. If you didn't already, there is a post on our Facebook page that you can like, and then we'll post the link there just to make sure that we have everything going, because this is the first one that we're planning to show, and excited to have others in the near future on Pios stream. So to Christine for joining us, to you for watching, I'm Ryan Goff. We certainly appreciate having fun with us on this Friday to wrap up our week of shows, and we look forward to getting back to you on Tuesday, as we do Tuesday through Friday, 11:30 a.m. Pacific time on Facebook Live. Please bookmark lcpioneers.com/live to find our page easily. And if you miss anything, you can find it on YouTube at youtube.com/lcpios. Have a great weekend. We'll talk to you again soon. Thanks for watching.
I'm Casey Jones, and I teach a range of classes: general chemistry, organic chemistry, and also some advanced classes. And I have a research lab that currently I have 4 students working with me as part of the Rogers program. The summer experience is a way to get really deeply involved in the science that is here and be able to start to define what might be what you want to do next. So the brown bag gives our students a chance to explain their research and really show the context and the application of what they're doing to a very broad range of students and faculty.
It's interesting to be able to communicate to other scientists what your work is, and it forces you to learn how to talk about your subject so that not only experts in your field can understand it, but others can understand it as well, which I just believe is a good life skill.
To talk about your research in a way that anybody can understand it really is a valuable experience, and it's something that you don't get a lot of practice for except in these contexts, because oftentimes you're giving a presentation to a classroom filled with people who know basically the same things that you do, but in a brown bag, you have to be able to explain and provide motivation for everything that you're working on and why it's important and why it's relevant to be studying.
I think everyone should take Intro to Chemistry because the chemistry department here is phenomenal. Everyone I've known has had a good experience with everyone in that department, so I think it's a worthwhile course to take.
What is one class that everyone should take at Lewis and Clark? I really enjoyed Education in a Complex World. You kind of get to discuss all the issues that exist within education today, and you get to kind of explore that by going to classrooms firsthand and volunteering with children, which I thought was a really wonderful experience.
One class that everybody should take at Lewis and Clark is anything with Kundai Chirindo. I think he definitely changed how I thought about rhetoric and media studies and just education in general.
For me, it was International Affairs, just Intro to International Affairs, because I think it really gives a good perspective on important issues around the world.